Welcome back to We Cultivate the Pod, where we explore the intersections of language and communication, culture, and identity. Today's episode is with Jonathan. Our conversation spans his journey in and out of different spaces and what he's seen in the language learning industry along the way. We dive into his experiences as an English teacher in different countries. We also talk about the patterns and barriers that we've both seen that often show up early through schooling and exam prep. But the heart of the episode actually touches on something broader, at least it does to me. And something that's really stuck with me since we recorded is this aspect of consistency in a way that feels right to you. See, Jonathan runs a speaking challenge where he speaks 6 languages or so a day, but he's quick to emphasize that that's his rhythm, about what works for him. And that's something that I know I and others continue to emphasize in the language learning space and really learning anything, not just languages, that it's not just about finding what you like, but something that works for you, something that's not a punishment, which we all often too quickly associate with learning. And maybe that is from school. Maybe that is from early life experiences. And Jonathan and I also talk about how we've helped people get past those things, whether as students, learners, trainees, or clients, things that many people carry from childhood into adulthood that are often the true blocks to learning. So this conversation is about systemic challenges, personal strategies, and the personal experiences that tie all these things together. Here is my conversation with Jonathan. Welcome then. Welcome to this podcast, which is taking a lot of time out of my life to produce, but how are you today?
Great. Thanks for the invitation. Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Great. I'll just let you go ahead and introduce yourself for our listeners.
So my name is Jonathan Huggins, and I have been an English teacher for a little over 25 years now. I'm originally from Southern California, but I've been living outside of the United States for about 23 years now, 22, 23. So I lived in Paris, France for 6 years. I studied there and started teaching a lot of business English. And from there, after about 6 years, I moved to Mexico City. And I've been in Mexico for the past 16 years. So Mexico City, and then more recently, Querétaro. So.
Which direction should we go first? Is kind of what I'm asking myself. I mean, I guess we can kind of talk a little bit about what made you start your life abroad.
I think I felt a bit limited in Southern California. I guess I could have gone upstate to San Francisco, but I decided to go like across the Atlantic. I think what probably motivated me was in my last year of high school, my French teacher had some kind of exchange between schools. So there were students from France or Switzerland that came over on their like Halloween, All Saints Day break in the French system. That there's a week there. They came to visit. They came to visit California for a week, and then on our spring break, we went to visit them for a week and see their school and have a host family and become pen pals. And from there, also another week in Paris without those families, but just 2 experiences, like a homestay for a week, and that was my first experience in Europe. And I was like, wow, I like it here. There's the languages, there's just everything's different. And so that caught my curiosity, and that encouraged me to accelerate my university studies so that I could eventually go to Paris. And then, that's what I wanted to do. That was the promise I made to myself. Like, I'm going to come back and either study here or live here. And I fulfilled that promise to myself.
Was it everything you wanted?
In my delusional dreams at the time, where it was like, I was watching a lot of this really old video series called French in Action. And I think every student in that generation who was watching French in Action, it's an 80s series from Yale, I think. and it created the story of an American in Paris
Uh,
and meets somebody, and it's all these little conversational these dialogues, which it's for the purpose of teaching French, but it creates this little dream of, hey, like it is a cliche, and an
yeah.
American in Paris, it is a very cliche thing, and when I was living in Paris, I did come across um, Hemingway's
Mm,
Movable Feast, and to say like if somebody lives in Paris in their early 20s, they carry that with them the rest of their life, in calling that experience in Paris and France a movable feast. I
yeah.
thought like, wow, that is true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has been true. Um, when I was there, I was like, how could I live anywhere else in the world? But
Oh,
I mean, it's a living museum. It's the architecture, just um, yeah. There was a dream, yeah, and I
yeah.
felt very much immersed in that. I
Yeah.
loved it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you studied there also before
Mhm.
you started working. Okay. Was it for English teaching?
The studying was
Mm-hmm.
French literature
Oh,
at the
okay.
Sorbonne.
Okay. So
It
you
I
went
got
on
out of
it
my
all in,
depths.
like
Yeah, I was very much out of my depth.
yeah.
I had professors in the like, I didn't know they were famous, but they were famous. They
Uh,
had books and stuff, and they were in these
mm,
lecture halls. My French was street French. It was conversational
mm,
French. Even though I had a bachelor's in French, I
mm.
was not in the American system in a bachelor's French. It was not French in France at the
Yeah.
university. So
Yeah.
I was taking notes, and I would get the first part of the first sentence, the middle
Yeah.
part of the the second sentence, and at the last part of the third sentence, I'd
Right.
look at my notes and nothing made sense.
Mm,
Um, so after a year, I was not doing great in the literature studies. I changed and switched to musicology. So I
oh,
equally had a bachelor's in French and music. So had taken a break from the music to look at French literature, and then French literature was just way out of my depth. And they said,
yeah.
"Okay, let me try music," and then I was able to get a diploma, the licence in
Yeah.
musicology. Yeah, but it
Yeah.
was challenging. It was challenging. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very cool. I mean, I did know that well, I see it sometimes on your socials that you play piano and guitar, right? That's what I've seen
Hmm.
so far.
Hmm.
Other instruments, or not to say that's not enough, but it's just, musicology is great.
Yeah, over the years, I think I started with trombone, then piano, then alto saxophone, tenor saxophone, baritone saxophone, guitar, then electric bass,
Mm,
and then uh, about 13 years ago, I decided to pick up the violin.
mm.
And the violin, then that like, oh, there's a cello. Let me try that. So as just
Yeah.
like candy at the cash register, like, oh, there's a cello. Let me get that. So
Yeah.
I think mainly now I do stick to piano and guitar. Those are probably the two I enjoy the most, and they have
Yeah.
different possibilities with that. Yeah. I'd say the switching between the instruments or picking the instruments up and also the different languages as well.
Mm,
It's probably I've learned this now as like much older in life, but probably some undiagnosed ADHD. So when something got challenging and I would have to actually put the effort in to get good at it, I
mm,
would jump ship
mm,
and just let's start something new.
mm,
Fortunately, I got good at that. But so I think there's the phrase like the jack of all trades kind
mm.
of a thing. I think the complete quote about the jack of all trades is like a master of none, but and then the
But
finishing part
still
is
better
like,
than
but sometimes, yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
still better than a master of one or something.
Hold on.
So
Yes,
some people when
exactly.
they
That's
yeah,
what it
when
is. Yes.
so when people do actually add the last part, you're like,
Mm,
diversity, variety is actually a good thing, but some people only quote the beginning part just to
yeah.
kind of shame people into like,
Mm,
hey, your your curiosity is spread thin. And I'm like, no, I like doing a variety of things. So yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I don't think there is anything wrong with wanting to have a more like generalist existence. And I do kind of always remind people like Industrial Revolution was a lot for why certain countries decided to make you specialize. I mean, during the time
Mm,
of Da Vinci, where it was anyone like, oh, how dare you do science and art and philosophy and all this? Like, come on. So I do think that we have to take a step back and just be like, it's a more modern thing for
hmm
everyone to be so into one thing, and maybe we need to ease up on that. I'm not saying that like we don't all have jobs. I'm saying more like let's remember we're still whole humans, right? And you can have a
hmm
multitude of interests and
hmm
ADHD notwithstanding, I just think it's a human thing. Like if you're curious about something, you can go towards it. Why not? But
hmm
that's just me. That's just how I feel because I'm also kind of like that. You speak a lot of languages also.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
let's chat about those.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I think I was probably monolingual until I was like 14.
Mm,
So then it was just the high school requirement at the beginning, like
mm.
2 years of a language.
Oh, I love that.
But
Yeah.
I enjoyed it, and and in my family, in terms of my parents and my brother sister of like what they had also studied in high school, I just thought it might be cool to be able to like practice Spanish with one or two of them and maybe practice French with
Mm,
another one of them.
hmm
So I opted in for another language, French one when I was in Spanish three. So I
hmm
had those two going on at the same time. And I didn't realize that the Spanish studies directly accelerated the French ones.
mm,
So when I was about to go into French 2, the teacher said, you know what? Skip French 2. Let's just put you in French 3. And I'm like,
mm,
really? And there's like, here's the French 2 book. Look at it over the summer.
mm,
It'll probably make sense based on stuff you've already done in French 1 and also from the Spanish. And
mm,
then I was in my last year of high school, I was in like Spanish 4 AP, which is
mm.
an advanced placement that gets potentially college credit if you take an exam,
Yeah.
and French 3. And that wasn't enough. I was curious to pick up conversational German at a community college at
Oh,
night.
nice.
And
Mm,
then I was starting to ask questions to one of the English teachers who still remembered learning Latin when they were
mm,
in school. So I was like, okay, teach me Latin since I'm starting to get interested in Spanish and French. And so
hmm
they would give me just a few little things on Latin.
mm,
And I was like, oh, this sounds familiar based on the Spanish and French. And then from there, I just ransacked the local public library and just started taking books and audio cassettes before
hmm
CDs and MP3s
Yeah.
and video series and just like I got the language bug and I was just like,
Yeah.
give me everything. Yeah.
Yeah. I imagine you at that time just like wanting to absorb anything and everything because I do think that there is something really magical that happens when this doorway to this other world opens and you're just like,
Mhm.
but this could happen with like any language. Like it could just be like so many more worlds that I get to see.
Definitely, yeah. I think there was this, yeah, definitely opening doors and just like, oh, I could talk to people from around
Yeah.
the world. And my dad was a language enthusiast as well. He dabbles. And he would pick up these audio series and books and things. So he had a pretty extensive bookshelf at home, and I would just start kind of, hey, can I borrow that like Pimsleur
hmm
Spanish?
hmm
And then, oh, hey, can I borrow that Pimsleur French? And then the
hmm
German and the Italian and Russian. They eventually thought I was really crazy because of the music,
hmm
all the music stuff I was doing, I had access to a bunch of audio cassette players and recorders. So I would intentionally put on 3 or 4, possibly 5, maybe cassettes
mm
of each different language. So I'd
hmm
have like Pimsleur one in Spanish
mm
and then another one, another lesson in French, another one in
hmm
German, and it would just be this bombardment, constant
Yeah.
bombardment of, do you remember how to tell the woman, like, I don't know what time it is, or ask her,
Yeah.
like, would you like to eat? And
mm
what time is it? Like, so I'd have those just bouncing back and forth in Spanish, French, German,
Yeah.
Italian. they would open the door and just like, this is kind of crazy, and I close it. So it's given me a lot of neuroplasticity. I thought it
Yeah.
was just fun, a challenge,
Yeah.
to keep my mind just active and curious.
Yeah.
Years later, it still helps. I still practice 6 languages on a daily basis.
Right. Yeah. And I am reading them in your bio. So basically, we have English, Spanish, French, German, Italian, and Russian on a daily basis. So,
Yeah.
and this is
Yeah.
also related to the speaking challenge that you do,
Mm,
right?
hmm
Yeah.
hmm Yeah, that's a program. It's inspired through my work with exam preparation, like the
Mhm.
TOEFL, where
Mhm.
students have to get comfortable making recordings with the microphone.
Mm.
In those exam conditions, they really just have like 45, 60 seconds to
Mm.
look at a question, think of what they're going to say, and speak and confidently.
Yeah.
I decided to take some inspiration from that
Mm.
and open it to like all languages
Mm.
and not put a timer aspect in there and also not put a limited time for the prompt. So
Mm.
I end up giving people maybe like a week that they can look at a prompt and
Mhm.
think, okay, a week from now, we're going to be talking about this. That gives you some time to review some vocabulary, review some grammar,
Yeah.
maybe write some speaking notes down. And then when it comes time to practicing it, then just record yourself speaking, improvise it, or read from some notes. It's very flexible. And that's a program I've been organizing for 8 years now.
Mhm.
And I also try to participate in it as well to say it is possible to do something for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes of a recording. Just
Mhm.
hit record, start practicing. It can be embarrassing. There can be mistakes, but you get tougher skin. It gets
Yeah.
easier. You gain more fluency, confidence. You activate grammar. You activate passive vocabulary, make it active vocabulary.
Mhm.
Um, and when you're in conversations with people, you don't always have access to the phone or the computer, or it's just going to interrupt a conversation if you're looking stuff up.
Yeah.
So it's a good idea to just get comfortable with, I don't know how to say that. Okay, how do I express that idea?
Mm.
Or, oh, it's not perfect, but here's the gist of what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So that becomes a habit. And as of right now, I'm very close to getting like a 5 year streak of the
Oh,
6 languages every day for
wow.
5, 10 minutes. And it really helps for the fluency and practice and the habits and the mindset.
Yeah. I think people underestimate, and this came up in another podcast episode, essentially the idea that it doesn't mean consistency doesn't mean that we need to be practicing, let's say 2 hours each day and then like just go hardcore and just concentrate on one language or just like drill grammar over and over. Sometimes consistency is just building the habit and it doesn't even have to be, I mean, yours is every day, but that's because that's the rhythm. It could be every other day, it could be once a week, whatever
Mm-hmm.
it is that helps you maintain the habit of practice because I feel like when people do something and they might be really committed to it and then they kind of it's like going to the gym, right? Like you're like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go, and then one day you miss it, and you're like, oh crap, and then you're like, oh, I'm gonna go next week, and you never really get back
Mm-hmm.
on, right? I feel like that's really what keeps coming back, as in it. It is a little easier um to build, I think, than some people think. I think it's hard to maintain, and that's why it's good to have community challenges,
Mm.
people to motivate you because even Duolingo can be very, very, I mean, they gamify it, but if you're just doing it
Mhm.
alone, I mean, especially if you're an adult, you're like, I have things to do. Why am I like this stupid bird's not going to tell me what to do with my time, you know?
Mhm.
Like I'm gonna make sure that I get my life done, and you can very quickly drop off, right? So I like that you encourage people to stay motivated.
Yeah, I think what is a really fundamental part of that when you mention like the gym and exercise and also like the Duolingo owl, what comes to mind is making sure that for consistency that it's guilt free. Like you
Yeah.
don't shame yourself if you do get tired or you do forget or
Yeah.
you do skip a day. A lot of people make an immediate association of like, oh, I'm stupid, or oh, what's wrong with me, or and I would just it's taken me a while to get up to a consistent thing that I could say is 5 years.
Mm.
It went maybe from a couple months to like 90 days and then 6 months, and then I would drop off and then question like, how do I do this? And then once you interrupt it, yeah, there is the shame, the guilt, or just, and that doesn't
Mm.
help. That just makes
Yeah.
it harder to just, I don't know, get back on the wagon kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But I think the self-compassion and just let me try again.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's a new day.
Mm.
Or next month is a new month. It doesn't have to be January 1st. Like any day could be January 1st.
Yeah.
If you're just willing to like, okay, I'm going to try something. And some other people who study habits and motivation, they say like, okay, just make it the easiest minimalist thing you could do.
Mm-hmm.
So like, can I do one push up?
Yeah.
And then when you do one, you're okay, I could do more.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like easing your way into something or okay, I'm going to record myself for 10 seconds. I can do
Right.
that. Okay. And then 10 could easily become 30. And you're like, oh, and now I've been speaking for 5 minutes. So
Yeah.
if you just ease that first thing to get back into it, without the shame, without the guilt, and just enjoy it and keep making positive associations with it, it leads to better results. But a lot of
Yeah.
people, we're human. Everybody makes mistakes, and just realize that the default is at some point something is going to feel unsustainable. Some unpredictable thing is going to happen during the day, and that could derail your plan or your goal. So I think having multiple options, like I can do something in the morning, I can do something in the middle of the day, I can do something in the evening. So speaking of recording, it's a little bit more flexible compared to going for a walk. That might be dependent on the weather
Mm-hmm.
outside or your energy level. So
Mm-hmm.
there's some other variables, factors that can get in the way.
Yeah.
And then so if things get hard, get simpler.
Yeah.
If you're like, I don't have 2 hours, no, just do 2 minutes
Yeah.
and just keep the ball rolling. That's a better way to approach consistency. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. This is like reminding me that I think I'm just starting to learn how many people are naturally very hard on themselves. I'm also very hard on
Mhm.
myself. I've heard also, many of the people around me say things like, yeah, we all need to practice more compassion, self-compassion, and
Mhm.
understanding. Sometimes it can feel like we're lowering our standards, and it's not the same thing. And I think
Mhm.
that sometimes something as simple as a language speaking practice can be a good way to practice a general life skill and a new habit, right? In something that is relatively low stakes, right? It's like
Mhm.
I'm going to rework how like my personal it's so deep. It's like my personal relationship with self-critique and self-compassion. I'm going to work on this in this safe space in a way that I've created for my speaking practice. And through that, I will also learn to maybe how to be kinder with myself in other ways, right? Because we think of these as isolated containers of different subjects and topics, but I also feel like at some point everything is like psychology in some way. At some point it's all behaviors, it's all thoughts, right? And
Mhm.
all the little loops that we get caught up inside every single waking moment. And yeah, it feels like that can be a good way to kind of show I mean, we talked about different worlds, but it's also like a different version maybe of what we could be in life.
Mhm.
We can be a little bit kinder. We don't have to be so hard. We're in a new generation also
Mhm.
of all this. I think gone, ugh, not gone, it still exists, but more people are speaking up and saying we don't always have to go hard, like, yeah, 30 days, go, go, right? Like with this has now thankfully died off a little bit more.
Yeah, there's definitely like this constant productivity,
Yeah,
never like always on, never off.
yeah,
And there is some real burnout and
yeah.
some backlash that like the body can only, the
Hmm.
body, the mind can only handle like so much intensity, or
Yeah,
it can go like short term, but as a long term approach
yeah,
for the consistency, I think, yeah, the self-compassion and, uh, yeah, things can be different. Those are, yeah, definitely part of like building that habit and the system as well, the system to
yeah,
create the habit.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also another point is many people are embarrassed to speak in front of other people, right? And so what you're doing is something also very powerful, which is, and I tell people this all the time, it's like you might not want to talk to people, but eventually language is used as a tool for communication. So you're going to have to like interact in real life, and better that you get comfortable in, again, a safe space, a closed setting, a
Hmm.
relatively gentle environment versus what's the alternative? Like in the moment, out in the real world where there's no, there's no like safety, there's no like
Hmm.
padded landing, right? Like you're going to have to just like figure it out. And you're right that even though we have translators and we have apps and everything, we're not, there's something very unnatural about speaking to someone and saying, oh, wait, hold on. I got to translate this in my,
Hmm.
let me get out my phone and just search this word and hold on, please wait for me as as I do this. Initially, sure, but as time goes on, you want to develop that rapport and that like that consistency also in the conversation, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely becomes a crutch. And I
Mm.
kind of look also at some of these adventure movies where they clearly try to give us two characters. One is a like a tech file where they have all the
Mm.
advanced technology, and suddenly the adventure movie, they're in a plane crash, and all of the, I mean, all the characters survive, but the devices and all that stuff breaks, and there's no
Mm.
Wi-Fi, there's no electricity, the batteries run out, the
Right.
screen is cracked,
Right.
and then there's this experienced wilderness expert who kind of
Yeah.
just, you know what? I don't need any of those gadgets. I have what I need up here. And then the story drifts towards that's the hero, and
Yeah.
the person who's dependent on the tech just has to learn to develop like some self-sufficiency and inner
Mm-hmm.
confidence and just like rely on their just like whatever they know, that's enough to get by. And I
Mm.
think in a language environment where like, no, I need my translator, I need my dictionary, I need Google, I need ChatGPT, I need all those
Mm.
things to kind of supplement these things for me. Those don't actually, they kind of replace things, but they don't actually develop the necessary skills when the screen is cracked, when the battery
Yeah.
breaks, when the, I don't
Yeah.
know, the Wi-Fi is turned off. Yeah, those things.
Yeah.
But,
I feel like those who were lucky enough to see the world under pre new tech, right? Like pre digital age, and can appreciate the transition and understand how to do things both ways. I feel like that's the most useful because I don't know, I'm always paranoid things are gonna like the power went out for like 5 minutes the other day, and I was just like I'll be fine, right? Because yeah, I remember like the power going out before. I also remember a time where like internet was like, so like this is totally livable. I mean, it's not my preferred world, but I will not be totally lost versus those who I just don't like having dependence on things, right? So
mhm,
if you're totally dependent on something, anything from an app to like, smart home automated systems, I do feel like,
mhm.
yeah, it's a little bit of a crutch. It's that's definitely the word I would use.
Yeah, where I live, yeah, I mean, not to kind of say call it out, but there is a bit of a wheel of fortune that we might spin once a week, where it's like, okay,
Mm,
what's going to be out this
mm,
week? Like, could it be the water supply? Could it be
yeah,
electricity? Going to be power outage? Is it going to be the gas? Is it going to be
yeah,
something? So there is a bit of a anything could happen. It's not great for working online, but
yeah,
I remember watching some of the news recently where like Spain and Portugal had a complete
yeah.
countrywide
It's
blackout,
crazy.
and
Yeah,
the news was really like, how are you surviving? And
yeah,
it almost sounded like it was like earthquake survivors
yeah,
and tsunami survivors, and I'm like, it's a power outage. I mean,
yeah.
yes, it's countrywide, but just the way, I mean, things could escalate in a way where it could get like social chaos, but it just the way the reporting made it sound like
I
way
know.
way
Okay.
out of proportion.
Where were we? Tech problems. And we just had one. So, yeah. No, I mean, I think that that also kind of shows the, mm,
Resilience, maybe, or
well,
adaptability. Yeah.
of a person. Yes. Right. Like, I mean, I can't speak for media, and I do think it's kind of like, we have to scale it to culture as well. It's not only about, I think, like the wealth status. I think it really depends on like how different countries handled it. So,
Mm.
So yeah, I did hear stories about that. I did hear how it was like, like for a lot of people. And I'm not saying that like obviously if it's in a
Hmm.
hospital situation, if you were if traffic lights went out and this is like a major road, obviously that's a concern. But also if you were just like a person in an apartment, like The water being out is for me a more serious problem than the power. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a major inconvenience. And I think some people realized some dependencies on
Mm.
like, okay, like a just in time sense of, okay, I got cash for
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
I need to go to the ATM. Oh, but the ATM is out.
Yeah.
And I need to go to the supermarket to buy food. Well, oh, but they need electricity to accept my card.
Yeah.
Okay, no, they're not accepting that because nobody has
Yeah.
cash.
Yeah.
So a cashless system can
Mm.
be vulnerable. But fortunately, yeah, fortunately, the situation, like in most the things that I heard in the news, uh, went back to normal,
Yeah.
but it does give some cause for reflection on like, okay, how dependent are we on everything? Yeah.
Yeah.
And how self-sufficient are we on many
Yeah.
things?
I will say, I think it's funny. I mean, I do it too, but sometimes, in these moments where it's not it may not be for you a life-threatening thing, but sometimes you're like, "Oh, I appreciate the presence," and it might be dependence, but people become more gracious and more kind of like they recognize more that normally in life we function with all these different invisible systems, and then it's not
Hmm.
until that goes away. I mean, COVID, like literally
Oh,
pandemic, right? Like
yes. Yeah.
everyone was like, I'm so grateful to have, all the things because now I can't go out, right?
And then the transition
Yeah.
after of kind of rediscovering things, socializing,
Yeah.
these things. Yeah. So, um, yeah, those moments, like a little moment of power outage, fortunately short, but yes, the pandemic and very life changing for many people around the world. Yeah, I think I yes, they are. There is the gravity, the gravitas of the
Mm,
situation
yeah.
in the longer scheme of the Earth and humans
Yeah.
on the Earth. I think there's a moment to reflect and go like, okay, what is our impact here, and how do
Mm,
we kind of just live with the world, not kind of
yeah.
in it, against it or dependent on it. And like, then, yeah.
Yeah. Can I ask you
Yeah.
about sort of the social integration side of things as a person who's lived in a couple different countries and places now?
Mhm.
Yeah. How, I would,
Mm,
if you want to just like walk us through or if you want to compare contrast, I'll leave it up to you, but yeah.
I think one of the first memories I have going back to that school exchange with a host family and getting a pen pal set up.
Mm,
I remember writing like the first letter to introduce myself. And I'm to this day, I'm still a bit embarrassed how much of a consumer and how materialistic my introduction was.
mm.
I was introducing myself based on the things I owned,
Ah,
because I don't know, it was an open-ended self-introduction. But I was very aware writing this in French and realizing like I was introducing myself not as a person, I was introducing myself as like, I have this, I have this, I have this.
ah,
And I was like, why am I doing that?
mm,
And then I rewrote it, but I think I threw away that first draft and go like, I don't say anything about myself. I only am talking about my possessions. And I'm like,
mm,
okay, there's something going on here in American society of just
mm,
consumerism and materialism.
mm,
And when I did go visit Europe, and I was like, okay, there's a different way of living, there's a different way of seeing things and opinions on things.
mm,
So I did start to romanticize a little bit of like European life or European differences,
mm,
um, probably to a bit of an extreme. But did when I did get there and start to adapt,
mm,
I did have experiences of culture shock.
mm,
So um, that's a natural process where we start judging initially. Something is different, but we immediately place a value on that if something is better or worse.
mm,
We don't immediately think of it as just tolerating differences or even
mm,
embracing differences or valuing diversity and differences of thought patterns
mm,
or ways of seeing things. Eventually, to the point I did start to like really embrace more European things to the detriment of hey, you're kind of letting go of some American things. I think over the years, I have learned of a concept which is these kind of triangles. I'm not inventing this concept, but there was some community that was called triangles, and the premise was that no matter where you are in the world, if your home country is a circle and another country you go to is a square, when you are if you are a circle in a square country, you eventually become a triangle. And if you try to go home, you're no longer a circle. And if you stay in that country that's full of, I mean, as a concept squares, you're still a triangle. You're not going to become a square. And if a square goes to a country that's with circles, the square will become a triangle. They will still be surrounded by circles. And if they try to go back to the country where there are squares, they will be a triangle. So the idea was fellow triangles should create their own space where they
Mm.
can feel like understood. And I think I identify with this concept. And it's not to call out any countries that are like, oh, that country's a circles country. That's
Oh
not a
yeah,
square
you're
country. It's
not
just
saying like a
concept.
circle is better than a square or vice versa.
No, it's
Yeah.
just their differences and
Yeah.
just you assimilate, you adapt.
Yeah.
And so in theory, I've gone through those processes. And I suppose on the culture shock spectrum, I'm still concerned about the reverse culture shock transition. So
Mm.
I've never really gone through it. I've just gone through tiny bits of it on
Mm.
vacation,
Mm.
and the vacation has been enough to say, I think I'm okay living abroad for 23 years and not actually moving home.
Yeah.
And then the reverse aspect, where I think the longer it is, uh, it gets harder, in a way,
Mm.
to like, okay, I visualize home as, well, it's like two trains on two parallel tracks that at some point the tracks split
Hmm.
and really start going different ways. And I can never go backwards on
Mm.
that because the home I grew up in, I mean the culture home that I grew up in the 80s and 90s no longer exists anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
We're all way beyond that. Um, but the memories of that still exist. So in some cases, I probably romanticize some things of or a childhood in a culture
Yeah.
versus an adulthood outside of the country. So I don't necessarily have adult experiences in my home country.
Mm.
So that creates a huge gap in terms of if my friends back home
Mm.
talk about like, hey, this thing, like a what? Like, how do you not know that? That's a basic thing of adult life
Yeah.
here. And I'm like, oh, sorry, I've lived my entire adult life outside of that. So
Mm.
there's just things I know that not everybody has those unique experiences, and it gets harder the older I get, in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, well, actually, you're touching on something I think a lot of people miss when we talk about what life is like when you move abroad or even temporarily. I mean, I feel like, so my first experience of it, it was not meant to be permanent in any way, even though I had a permanent work contract. It was like, let's see where this goes, let's see what happens. But then I also think in that whole conversation, many times people focus on the countries as if they're static, as if societies don't change, as if it's just like, we are here. Well, so you started here, then you go there. And then it's like, okay, well, what's it like? And on both sides, I feel you have conversations in, let's say, country A and country B, right? So you have instances of people asking you, but then over time, it's not only the longer you stay out of your home country or make a new country your home, I think it's also like what you mentioned. The country that you left was like in a certain time period that no longer
Mhm.
exists anymore. This is also true for wherever you are. And I mean, you've also moved multiple times, right? So every time that you move, it's kind of like your memories. I don't know if I can speak for you, but and tell me if you don't agree. But I feel like the memories are kind of frozen in that time.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then when you go retrieve them, I think sometimes people forget to say, like, it's not. like for instance, if you're talking about the US, I appreciate that you're adding in like, well, it's the US in like the 80s and 90s, which it doesn't exist anymore in the US, like it completely in the way that you experienced it then, right? And also
Hmm.
like it's
Hmm.
the experience of a child versus that of an adult. I think especially when people go to different countries for school, let's say,
Hmm.
they forget that's the experience of a student. If you didn't
Hmm.
live and work there, it's gonna be different, right? So then people are like, well, I heard from my friend that this thing is like this. And it's like, well, that's why we all have different experiences. That's why
Hmm.
sometimes you can get two people together who have technically lived, like you've lived in France, I've lived in France, um, not the same city, first of all.
Hmm.
Second,
Hmm.
second of all, not the same time period, also not the same like conditions.
Hmm.
So of course we're gonna say kind of different things, right?
Hmm.
We might overlap, we might find
Hmm.
commonality, but we're not gonna say 100% the same story.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, what has been like your, for example, for France, like,
I think I got to decrease my cognitive load before entering the country, meaning I already understood the layout of the city. I knew it really, really well. I didn't speak the language yet, but like before I moved, I geographically could pinpoint it. I also got a sense for the culture, for the people, for like how things worked. I feel like people oftentimes, because you move and that's like your first introduction to everything, it's thrown at you.
mm,
It's it's so much more intense. For me, I think I got to ease into it that way.
mm.
Yeah. Do you mind if we talk a little bit about your teaching experience in Paris?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, I think with initially with like easing into that student life of like I was actually there on vacation, and then I happened to enter in the academic calendar where you could just be a random stranger, walk in their office, admissions office, and say, "Hey, could I study here?" And they might say, "Yes, you can start in
Mm,
October." And I'm like, I was initially thinking about joining in January, and they're like, "No, you can start in October. We don't do half semesters. You have to
oh,
start in October."
mm,
And then I was still there on vacation. I was like, okay, I need to get a student visa.
mm,
So I did have to go back to LA to get a visa for being able to study.
mm,
And I also needed a little bit of help from my parents, like the like a monthly stipend to just before I could like get a like any student work.
mm,
And then eventually the dollar euro just it became kind of just unsustainable.
mm,
And my parents were like, "We're yeah, you need to be completely independent here."
mm,
So that's when I was going into a lot of just doing anything. And the first
mm,
thing that I could really easily do was teaching English like cafes
mm,
and odds and ends as a student. And then from there, get into like teaching in elementary school.
mm,
So I was teaching like one or two elementary schools with like third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade in the
mm,
American system. And the French system, it was like CMS, M2.
mm.
Yeah, about that age. The
Let's
kids were like
let's
8,
not bring
9,
up
10,
the
11, 12. Yeah.
insanity that is the, I mean, I've had to
The
learn this
like the
also, but
numbers, the
yeah, the
names.
numbers
Yeah,
that
yeah,
reverse and then
yeah.
go back and then
Yeah.
go into a new, oh my God, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
but like,
I
yeah.
have kids and
Yeah.
I have to like what is the name of this
It
school
does
year?
not go one, two,
It
three, four,
changes.
five. It doesn't just
No,
ascend. Nope. It's not
no.
that easy. Yeah.
It changes letters and
Yep.
things. Yeah. But yeah, so I was teaching in elementary schools,
Mm,
and that was an interesting experience because I was a university student in the afternoon
mm,
and teaching elementary school students in like morning. I also got a huge cultural insight where definitely between the education systems for like United States and France. In the United States, there was this way of think outside the box, think for yourself, be an independent thinker.
yeah.
And everything seemed to be the opposite when I was in the French system, where I would start writing vocabulary words on the whiteboard, and instantly the children, I mean, they had been taught like, okay, put the title,
Yeah.
put the
Yeah.
date,
Yeah.
underline the title,
Yeah.
start like I learned as a university student like la forme et le fond, so
Yeah.
the format and the content,
Yeah.
they were equally important. And I was a complete mess as an American student, where it's like think outside the box and
Yeah.
just like who cares about the form? It's
Yeah.
the content that
Mm,
matters. And when I was in that system, it was like just 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, and 10-year-olds going like, Like, Monsieur, do we underline it? Is it in red? Like, do
Yeah.
we put the date? Like, where do we put the date? Do we put the
Yeah.
date on the left, the top, the right? And I was like, I I wanted to say I don't care,
Yeah.
but I was being at the same time chaperoned by the home teacher,
Hmm.
like who was teaching the children. Like, yes, you put a title and you put the date and you put this like very pretty notebook entry.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And then I would go back into the city and go to my university classes, and I would be in an amphitheater, and there'd be a university professor at the front of the room, and the professor would write something on the whiteboard and then underline it. And I would
Yeah.
hear this ripple effect in the entire room because everybody would open their pencil cases,
Yeah.
pull out a ruler, pull out the pen, take off the pen cap. Then you'd hear this, and you hear like 100 times in the room. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like
Yeah.
it's real. Like you
Yeah.
you indoctrinate them when they're 8 years old and 9 years old and 10 years old, and then you
Yeah.
see them when they're 20 and 21. And I'm
Yeah.
like, where are the independent thinkers? And,
Yep.
and and nobody would answer
I
questions. And I
know.
mean, again, I don't want to really say,
Yeah.
but it was just like I don't know anybody else who had that exact same experience of like the morning,
Yeah.
you're getting bombarded by these questions from the kids of like, what's the mise en page, the way you set it up is very
Yeah.
important. And I'm like, just the content, get it on the page. I don't care
Yeah.
about the form. And then go straight to the university and it's like doing the exact same thing that
Yeah.
they had just done and elementary school and middle school and high school. And it was like, okay. And I was just like, okay, this is not for me, but it did teach me discipline. It did teach me a value for design
Hmm.
and it's a struggle I still have, or it's appreciation and the struggle I still have. But this constant back and forth between like content design and which one is like they go together, but like I'm not a designer. Like I teach and I enjoy the content, but
Yeah.
I have to wear many hats as a like a content creator
Right.
online now, which
Right.
I prefer to just do content and have a designer do that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, so I think a couple different things to echo there. Like I was a gymnast for a long time, but then I was a modern dancer. And inside of the world of modern dance, I don't know if it's kind of like modern art also. People I think are surprised. This is related, I promise. People are surprised because when we start talking about modern or contemporary techniques, it's kind of like, well, anything goes. Like, you can a freedom of expression, right? That's the idea. But I feel like people don't understand how many years of technical training you need to have as an artist or a dancer or performer of any sort. You need to have a good foundation. And so I think what you're talking about, like when you're talking about form versus content, right? And I'm thinking, yeah, I mean, to me, the form, like where you put things on a page, that's very much like the fact that I had to do ballet, even though I was a modern dancer, right? You do need to have certain fundamentals. It doesn't mean that you can't go and still also be independent in thought and expression, though. So that's why I feel like this kind of fake war that always exists between like, no, but if you don't do it this way, it's not, like Americans are so whatever about their systems and their structures, and they're just, yeah, free thinking is good, but it's not good because it's like a mess, right? But then also here, I feel like, and I absolutely sense that as well. Just not, I look at it from like looking at the kids and also up through adults, right? Like what is happening? Like I'm
Mhm.
not used to this level of like uniformity and to some to no small degree conformity because as you say, like everyone's
Mhm.
doing the same thing at the same time. That is so strange to me because I'm from this world, right? And again,
Mhm.
it's like circle, square, and yes, people are triangles, sure, but also I think there's oftentimes this false binary going on. And that's why I want to say like the dance thing is related, because I'm like, you can still find your own way through it. I do think that there's appreciation that we can get for cultivating autonomous people in a way, like independent thinking people, and at the same time appreciate that a little bit of structure and discipline is good.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're both. Yeah, it's not like one versus the other. There's a
Yeah.
balance in a way.
Yeah.
Um, and later, then I transitioned into teaching just adults one-on-one
Mm,
and business contacts and going to the offices um, and there I enjoyed it quite a lot.
mm,
And I was, yeah, gaining access to just different clients, client offices, international companies, multinational companies,
Mm.
um, and like I don't know, name dropping some companies, but like Air France,
Yeah.
Chanel. Chanel was cool because I did get to Coco Chanel's like her apartment office
Oh.
that still exists, and the student I had at the time was responsible for loaning the dresses,
Oh,
these like really
yeah.
handmade dresses, and I was like, "Do people rent these?" And they're like, "No, no, no, no. We it's an honor for them to wear this dress, and we
Ah.
select only a few people." And she's like, "Okay, like, well," and she showed me the dresses, and I was like, "You're showing me these dresses?" And I'm like, and she's like, "Here, in touch." I'm like, "No, I can't
I
touch."
dare
Like, "No,
not to,
touch."
yeah.
Like, it's like I felt like I was in a scene from like The Devil Wears Prada or something.
Yeah,
Just
I know.
like
Yeah.
what? No, yeah. So those were some access things through teaching and through meeting students
Mm.
at different places, or um, all kinds of stories from staff at Air France, of the
Yeah.
flight attendants, ground staff. Just you hear all these kinds of things. So there's a lot of fascinating students and all different levels from beginning to
Mm.
advanced, and all different hierarchical levels of,
Mm.
assistants and receptionists to supervisors, managers, directors. It
Yeah.
was just everything, and people saying, "Hey, I need help you with like the translation of this, and can you help me with
Yeah.
that? And I need to prepare for this meeting." So it kept me very much on my toes,
Yeah.
and that really developed a lot of fluency between English and French, and all the skill sets, and really helping people with their confidence and speaking. Um, and there's two students I do talk about oftentimes when I'm giving presentations and some conferences about language learning. And one particular student, uh, one of my first ones in the business environment, was very anxious, nervous, a bit of a
Mm.
perfectionist
Mm-hmm.
with trying to finish a sentence, but interrupting the sentence before getting to the end of it,
Oh.
and needing this kind of validation
Mm.
of like, was that the right tense? Was that correct? Did I say that right? Was the pronunciation correct?
Mm.
So we had to kind of just pause, and I said, okay, this is a couple of stuff we need to just address, to just kind of like, the mistakes are not a problem. This is okay. And eventually, we did get the student to kind of feel a bit more comfortable, just not afraid of the mistakes, and just start enjoying it. And that gave me a sense of, as working with adults,
Mm.
some, uh, I mean, I don't have the proper training for this, but helping people overcome some traumas from
Mm.
learning in elementary schools,
Mm.
or other schools, or maybe bullied from a teacher, bullied
Mm-hmm.
by other classmates. And so that's something I have incorporated into teaching, and just like the self-compassion, the
Yeah.
mindset, the you're in a safe space. The second student that I refer to was one of the first ones I met when I moved immediately to Mexico City.
Mm.
And this was a director in a company. And every day I was going and taking my notes, handing in a report of it, but I would come back, and the next day that stuff would be at the bottom of a pile, and the notes were not really being reviewed, and the mistakes were
Mm.
being
Mm.
repeated. So I was getting just a little like, what am I doing? Is my job just like error correction, a grammar
Yeah.
checker? And one day I was waiting there in the office, and he's calling from like a car phone and saying like, "Hey, I need to cancel. Like, I've got a conference call with Houston, Chicago in like 5 minutes. My assistant can give you the money, and I'll see you
Mm.
tomorrow." And as he was coming up, I was just like, that, oh, I've got a conference call with Houston and Chicago. That stuck in my mind. I was like, so I was taking my time, putting my stuff away. And when he did come in, he was in a hurry. He didn't really have time to argue with me, but I was like, hey, can I stay and just listen?
Mm.
I won't open my mouth. I won't say anything. I'm just curious. And so when I was listening to this conference call, he was very fluent. He kept making the same mistakes that I always kept correcting. But what was very fascinating was listening to the reaction from the people from Houston, Chicago.
Yeah.
They didn't care.
Yeah.
They absolutely did not care about his English mistakes.
Yeah.
They were just focused on the content
Yeah.
of what he was saying. He's an
Yeah.
expert in some thing I'm not going to say, but he was an expert in that field, and they were there to talk to him about his expertise,
Mm.
not give him an English lesson or correct his pronunciation or his grammar or the
Yeah.
vocabulary. Uh, so I walked away from that experience going like, okay, my job is not just to be an error
Yeah.
corrector and grammar check
Yeah.
and all that stuff. I'm like, what is fluency? What is
Yeah.
communication?
Yeah.
So since then, I've definitely like recalibrated a lot of stuff and go like, okay, if it's functional, if
Yeah.
it's communicative,
Yeah.
it works, then that's enough. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be error free. And that creates a lot of that stress that I could see from that first student. Like, I don't want my job to be just like anxiety provoking. I want
Hmm.
to make people feel comfortable and confident and in a safe space and in control of the situation and that they're making a human connection from one person to another. So those experiences have really changed my teaching philosophy over the years.
Mm. Well, because I work in this capacity, so we're on the same page. But I
Mhm.
think what surprises people, because especially if you've been in such a rigid academic system, this is where I do think that culturally speaking, I can't speak for all the US because again, if you didn't know, we all have education is done by state and county and basically county. So, and also do we have private options? So that means every single person was educated very differently. I mean, even people in the same county are educated differently depending on which school you go to. So, but there is something cultural, I think, in society where it doesn't mean that we're not perfect when it comes to grammar, but I think the US as a whole have so many different types of languages already spoken, so many different types of people. We kind of take it for granted that you don't need to be perfect in order to communicate. I think we see it every single day. You don't even need to see it like in your hometown. You can see it on TV. You can see it, because you can understand people. I think the difficult part is when many people who were taught in school that perfection equals success. So language and grammatical perfection equals communicative success. I mean, that's not an appropriate jump to make, right? I feel like that is something that is unfortunately it could work towards your success, especially if you're using it, well and you know how to harness those abilities. I just do feel like unfortunately this is where I personally see that in many what we would consider advanced language like level people there are so many communication gaps and skills gaps because they just never learn to embrace both. And it often, again, it's another fake war that I feel like doesn't need to be fought. It's like, no, but I know that if I say it like this, that sentence should mean this. It's like, yes, but also you need to scale it to the context that you're speaking. It's not
Mm.
how you speak to each person is going to be different, right? And I mean, oh my God, it just sounds like just like hearing my other solo podcast, the one I do on like just training. But I mean, it is exactly that. I think we'll get farther if we don't fight these unnecessary wars, especially online, especially when I see so many people say things like, oh, well, Americans just don't care because, again, it's like the English speakers just say whatever and they don't even know their own language. It's like, well, all the people of every single type of society, country, language, they use language in a multitude of ways. I do feel like sometimes if you're working with someone who hasn't realized that about their own language, there is this additional hurdle to overcome where they don't know they're code switching. They don't know that they have, they've never done that self-reflection. And then when you ask them to do it, it's like, I mean, it's like mind blowing for some of them.
Bug, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes, they bug first. And then after that, it's like epiphany, hopefully, right? And hopefully it's like, yeah, this other stuff, this like personal development stuff that you're touching on that will help them also see other aspects of their life. So,
Yeah, I think what you're mentioning about the communication as well and these kind of being perfectionists, I do see that pop up in exam preparation work as
mm,
well, where like the speaking and communicating at a high level does have its placements because in those like contexts where I do want to somebody have a human contact and a connection and say, okay, be your represent yourself or your ideas, but not have all that pressure of it has to be perfect.
right.
I do have to switch it,
Yeah.
put on different hats when it's an
Yeah.
exam and say, I unfortunately I do have to hold you to
Yeah.
certain standards that whether you like it or not, you are going to be assessed
Yeah.
and judged based on this criteria. Um, and then also when it goes into job interviews,
Yeah.
it's very unfortunate to see how if we start to notice somebody's language mistakes
Mm.
because maybe they're nervous or they're anxious in
Mm.
that interview and they start making a few little minor mistakes in a language, it's very unfortunate with human consciousness of just or the psychology of just like,
Yeah.
oh, well, if you don't know the English well enough, how do I know that you're an expert in what you claim to be an expert in? And
Right.
it's not fair at all.
Yeah.
We don't give credit to say, okay, this person speaks 90% of the language. They might have 10% they can work on,
Yeah.
but we fixate too much on those 10%. Oh, it's like glass is basically empty because
Mm.
it's missing that 10%. And so
Yeah.
we're very quick to judge on the language part and
Yeah.
start equating it to, oh, well, this person doesn't know they don't know what they are talking about, so I'm not going to hire them.
Right.
And it's really unfortunate, especially with the exams as well, where
Right.
it's a snapshot
Yeah.
of any given day.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that it can be a very stressful moment and it can be expensive and it could be lots of people that have an impact on somebody's performance, but it's just a snapshot
Yeah.
and we're judging people based on those criteria. Like if I could, I would redesign an exam experience where you don't
Yeah.
realize you're being tested.
Yeah.
You don't realize it. It's kind of some kind of a 360
Mm-hmm.
situation and it's not
Mm-hmm.
you don't realize it's happening, but it's happening in the background kind of a thing.
Right. Yeah.
Or a job interview where it's happening in the background, you don't realize you're in an interview or something. But
Right. Anytime you want to do that, I'm down. We can, I don't know how who will back
mm,
us, but yeah, I mean, we know this also from psych research, from all research actually, but anytime I mean, what we're talking about is a couple things, right? But the first being evaluation systems, assessment systems exist for a reason. I mean, that's just the truth. I feel like that's just the fact of life. Okay, but also there are other ways to look at it. That's why companies started doing 360s also because of
hmm
this fact that like it's that snapshot and that's all we have. We probably need
hmm
something a little bit more holistic. But I do think that many people don't know, and maybe you can kind of touch on how you can preach both things, right? How can you say that on the one hand, it doesn't matter because language and communication are related but separate, and communication doesn't have to rely on language perfection. On the other hand, you're like, oh, but you do need it for the exam. This is another fake war. Can you address this?
Yeah, I would say you sometimes have to jump through the hoops, play the game by somebody's rules. If you want to get their prize, which is, I don't know, the job, the university application,
Right.
or the licensing or something like that, it's like, okay, don't shoot the messenger. I'm there to facilitate and really just and kind of like, okay, help you get through that process so that you can get back to the other stuff, which is we're humans.
Yeah.
On that one day, yes, it's stressful. And unfortunately, part of that experience is handling the stress. So, like, I do have to tell a lot of people, like, I wish this was an English test. And they're like, what? It's not? And I'm like, no, there's so many other
Yeah.
factors
Yeah.
that are going to sabotage your experience on it. Like, if it was just an English test,
Yeah.
it would be easy.
Yeah.
But it's so much more than that. It puts pressure on your time management skills, on your stress management skills, on just all those little things that you're
Yeah.
being pushed to this extreme. Those things are being tested. I wish it was only the English part. And
Yeah.
then when we do go to like just a conversation, we take some of that stuff out of the thing. And it's like, okay, like it's a conversation. I'm not putting a timer and saying, here's a piece of paper and write down what did you do
Yeah.
on the weekend. I'm not expecting that.
Yeah.
So I can take some of that time pressure away in a conversation with a friend, or I'm like, whatever you say, I'm going to decide if I want to be your friend or not. I'm like,
Right.
no, that's not, that's not
You're not like,
reality.
how many verbs did you use, and
Yeah.
how did you conjugate them well, or like how many advanced vocabulary terms did you insert in a naturalistic way? Yeah, you're not looking at that.
No,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm like, okay, no, stress free.
Yeah.
It happens here. It's a bit more of these other stuff. The language element, it's a small part ends up being, but in the other things, it's like, okay, just like tell me about your week.
Yeah.
And I'm so surprised at how many times when I start a class and it's like, how's the week going? And people really look at me like the deer in the headlights of like,
Mm.
what do I say?
Yeah.
But and it's almost like I'm like, asking a really strange question. Like, wait, you people don't ask you how you're doing in your
Yeah.
daily life, and it's just
Yeah.
like we don't care anymore. Yeah, so sometimes it's that kind of it. There seems to be a disconnect the longer I teach, where
Right.
especially I can see with our attention spans getting shorter and shorter, and uh, the value of education seems to be kind of commodified in a way of just like which teacher is willing to do this at the cheapest
Right.
rate as like a reverse auction.
Right.
And so that gets a little challenging to connect, stay relevant with
Right.
students. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is also another one of those big paradigm shifting moments for somebody who has never learned that even for formal examination, when they were a student, they were always taught maybe that this was the way to evaluate their performance. And maybe especially for people, I this is my personal experience, who put a lot of their identity, of their weight, like their how they value themselves in their academic performance. For someone to say, well, formal examination is really just a closed environment and it is a system, sure, but like it's also just based on how you do, it's a snapshot, right? And so basically you just work inside of that. I feel like there is this dissonance that happens for a lot of people and they don't realize that it's okay. Like we're not like undoing all of your accomplishments of the past. We're not like breaking it. It just, you have to know that if you want to go forward in life, sure, for instance, TOEFL or whatever it is, you will do this. But then eventually you will also need to survive like the real working world environment. Like if you speak to everyone like you do for a TOEFL exam, like no one's gonna be your friend, you know, like no one's going to want to like collaborate with you. You sound really rigid and robotic.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, some students can get some advice that's out there.
Yeah.
I don't have control over this on the internet, but where they get an idea like, oh, I have to speak a certain way for the exam and all this. And I'm like, kind of, you need to loosen up a little bit. And they're like, no, but I need to be impressive. I need to add these vocabulary words, these academic words. I have to say this. And like, you're just making it harder,
Right.
and that is um yeah, it's going to backfire. Yeah.
Yeah.
And unfortunately there is a lot of advice that's out there that I kind of compete with in some of that
Yeah.
stuff. And it's once some of those seeds are planted for some
Yeah.
weeds, it's harder to pull those out
Yeah.
once they're there.
Yeah.
So that gets harder with the online teaching space because like anybody is an expert now. Yeah.
Right. I will ask you, if you can, to talk a little bit about some of the things that you find challenging about the industry, the way things are, maybe good things also, but any thoughts on this?
So the industry in general, I have a lot of friends. I know a lot of people, but the let me start with the positive things. So without like calling myself out, but there are a lot of smaller profiles that are experts that they do know, like they do have a lot of experience in things. And so it is important to find those individuals who have the experience. They might be smaller accounts. They might not be fancy marketers. They might
Mm,
not have all the gadgets and bells and whistles on on what they're doing, but they're doing a lot of great stuff and they're helping a lot of students. And that said, there there is a proliferation of a lot of startups and apps and things that right now there are a lot of them embracing AI, and I'm not really convinced that they're hiring language consultants or experts or
mm,
specialists for their input on these
yeah.
apps. I think they are quickly developing and quickly distributing, and there is a market of students, potential students who don't know the kind of what what the basics are,
Mm,
and that makes them a potential target
mm,
for I don't want to say specifically scams, but inferior product
Mm,
that is very quickly deployed
mm,
and that can give the impression that it's helping, but in the long run, it might not really be a helpful tool, and it can be very quickly gamified and monetized. It's very easy to find those, and they're all over the place now. And even before AI, there are also other apps that have been out there that are developed in such a way that they are marketed. They might have unrealistic claims to
mm,
say these guarantees, these promises that are not realistic. And that can speak to a certain part of the learning market
right.
that is receptive to those messages to say this is going to be easy and you don't have to make an effort and it'll be overnight. And that is just not kind of realistic.
Right.
But I think those concepts touch upon so many other things around like daily life now where it does get into other things where that without specifically stating it and getting into that, but it can even go into political
Mm,
discussions where people might be receptive
mm,
um, to fake information, fake
yeah.
news, conspiracy things. So that kind of potential student can be receptive to those messages, not only in their news feed, what can be in their social media feed, but they can also have some beliefs about what it's like to learn a language
Mm,
and they can be easily immersed in a series of apps. And if you have a guide, if you have somebody who knows what they're doing and teaching and provides that value, then yes, things can accelerate, things can be developed in a certain way that you can have an immersive experience where you can make some progress. It does exist. It's just not necessarily one size fits all for everybody.
yeah.
So things should be tailored. I would love to see
Mm,
technology develop in a certain way where we do get AI, we do get some tech, and we do get a language expert that can go in and like this 360 thing where
yeah.
you could have a very personalized, immersive experience that is only for you
Right.
and not one size fits all for everybody, and you are
Right.
a easy target. Like I would love to see AI in the next iteration where like you could have your digital footprint turned into learning content.
Right.
Um, it is a thing that I've tried to offer to a few test subjects to say like, okay, like show me your digital footprint
Mm,
and let me turn that into some learning content for you. And it would be highly personalized because it's like, okay, you're talking about that in your Facebook feed. You're talking about that in your Instagram post. You're talking about that on your blog. You're talking about that in this,
mm,
or here's a couple emails. Here's a couple access to a couple chat messages.
mm.
I mean, if I do that as a person, it's just a limited approach. But AI could definitely get
Yeah.
its hand everywhere in there and turn that into a whole language corpus of
Right.
information that could be translated. It could be turned into audio. It could be turned into translation exercises.
Hmm.
So, with a lot of creativity, some of those tools could have a lot of potential if we put it in the hands of language teachers and experts
Right.
instead of let's make a lot of money very quickly
Right.
and give it to people who don't know what they're doing and they don't know what they want and they're going to easily be tricked. So that's
Right.
that's what I see the potential of,
Mm.
but the reality is money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a way to make
uh,
money also with
yeah,
even
yeah.
you can still make a good product. This is my
Mhm,
UX
mhm,
designer talking. Yeah. So essentially, I feel like what you're talking about is this. Yeah, and I love the forward thinking mindset on this because we are talking a lot about how AI will cripple us, but this is a way that it can actually work to our greater good in a way.
mhm.
I just want to say before we go, if there is something that you could tell, oh, I don't know who, but maybe some advice you would give to people who are listening, who are, for whatever reason, I just always imagine in my head, it's like you're literally just being like pushed from product to product to person, lost in this whole consumer market. What advice would you give them?
I think something along the lines of like know thyself, just this kind of
Yeah,
introspection and kind
yeah,
of reflect on things.
yeah.
Um, and embrace that in the language learning. So I do enjoy the making the things that you're doing with your speaking and your writing meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
So personalized and meaningful. So you could talk about your favorite color, but you could also say, hey, like, what's my definition of happiness? And explore that
Mm,
in another language. And that is a filter that does kind of force you to highlight some of these things that kind of rise to the surface when you're thinking about that stuff. So I really love that mix of language learning for personal self-development. And in terms of anybody who's out there, just start today, start
mm,
small, be like kind to yourself, be patient with yourself, and just start now. There's some quotes I've heard of like the best time to plant a tree was like 20 years ago. The next best time is today or
yeah.
yesterday. So
Yeah.
you might as well just start today. Yeah. You'll look back from the future as your future self and go like, okay, how can I make my future self proud of myself
Mm.
by doing things today? That I'll wrap up with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. I totally agree. And thank you so much for taking some time out of your week. I know I saw your post on how busy your calendar is. So it
Yeah, it
seems,
comes and goes, but
yeah.
yeah, it fluctuates. But I love enjoying the getting a chance to talk with other teachers, other people in the teaching space and coaching space, consulting, and I love what you're doing with the podcast. And there's been a lot of enjoyable conversations I've heard with other guests. So thanks
Yeah.
for the
Thank you.
invitation. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for being a guest. I hope you enjoyed this episode of We Cultivate the Pod. Make sure to subscribe here and wherever you get your podcasts so you can catch new episodes as they become available. I also share After the Mic reflections on Substack, the place where I dive into the themes that stay with me long after recording. Beginning in 2026, you can also find additional bonus content from guests and other We Cultivate extras. Subscribe for free to the Communication Shift on Substack. The link is in the show notes and in this description. Thank you so much for joining us this time, and I will see you in the next episode.